Good evening, everybody. System Chalk here with the 141st episode of our first run through the House of Light expansion to Book of Hours, playing as the Archaeologist. I am the librarian of Hush House, and this journal will record what arose from my crime and my curse. The Archaeologist's dearest wish when they came to the house was to record a history where their crime, could be forgiven or redefined. But you can complete the game by recording any history. You might wish to begin your studies with the Skolakosophy wisdom. I opened a tomb and found too late that it was a prison. The plague that I released is now my shadow, or perhaps I am its reflection. It is too late to set matters right, but it is never too late to protect the future from the past. In Hush House I can do no harm. Perhaps I can even make amends. Now, we're going to be building up our skills in terms of Sacra Solis and Oh, hang on, was it Sacra? No, it was Bells and Braziers. And I needed to try and find something to do with quenchings and quellings, and I believe I was going to be putting that into surgeries and exsanguinations. But on top of all of that, I also have the Barber's assistant, so I need to make sure I keep a FET available and I have all of the different items to work effectively with him. I don't think that's going to be a problem, but I do need to make sure that I'm keeping on top of it. And I think for now, there is a temptation to do a few other things. I may try and make an Ascendant Harmony, for example, which would use the Faust, but I maybe want to make sure that I've locked myself into all of the other tasks. So the Barber's going to be able to open up the Riddling Stair. I want to make sure that we have, an opportunity to get the various skills leveled up. I want to make sure that those are sort of locked in before we go too far on any of the other tasks. And then at some point I'd like to deal with all of the items loading up on the bridge, but I think that's going to become a permanent feature of the house. Let's get going. Now, one thing that I'm a little worried about, and in fact this might be, well, no, I've kind of committed to it either way. I'm trying to get a forge, 55 seconds, but I'm doing so in a way that I can't actually level up Bells and Braziers without, like, anything that I'm putting into this leveling is going to overwrite the Solace and the Beguiling Melody and such. So I think I messed this up. I had the right idea in the sense that it would only take me 30 seconds in terms of leveling things. But for Bells and Braziers, I do need Forge and I do need Sky, and I need one more memory along those lines. So before I go any further... Yeah. So, I mean, the question is, am I willing to give up a Daidumos in order to make this happen? And I don't have a whole lot of options. I could try and touch something and get the forge there, but I think the window for that interaction is too narrow. So, my mistake. But I need to deal with it. So in this case here, I think we'll just have to employ the Daidumos, and of course that means that I need to. It means that I need to regenerate one after I get the Ascendant Harmony. Now, actually, somebody asked an interesting question, and it turns out I was wrong about Spencer. So Spencer has been a number of things: journalist, private detective, priest, Suppression Bureau irregular. He's still a number of things. That might not be a problem. He's disinclined to speak. He hopes to visit the Rowanarium beneath Hush House, to pass through it, to go out somewhere. Take him to the Rowanarium, or refuse entry by returning him to the Endless Guest Node. Note that Spencer arrives with Numa, but he will lurk in the Cornish mists even after Numa is over, until you resolve his business. So I didn't think that Spencer was a memory, but in fact he is. Something remembered might be something understood. So I guess what happens here is the presence of this in Numa will trigger his arrival, and then maybe there's just a replacement one that comes up after Numa. He also has the key aspect, so I believe my understanding is... Oh, okay, we can add him any old time. I think I kind of want to do this during Numa, though, so... Or not. I guess it's not. Yeah, for some reason I thought he was kind of a Numa arrival, but turns out I can actually add him any old time. Wasn't expecting that. Skill is now level 8. Its power aspects have also increased. So, if I tried to go for the touch, then we wouldn't be able to level up. Or we would lose these items here. So, as much as it pains me, the Didymos is something we can easily replace. At last, I'm something of an authority in this. Improve the skill to level 6. One last pipe shrill, and the wind is still. Now, I should have a leftover memory when all this is said and done, but for now, I want to see if I can get away with an easy Ascendant Harmony. It would help if I actually put the right items together. I keep getting this wrong. Fair enough. I do want to find something to do with the inescapable confinement, but that's probably a tomorrow problem. A full belly makes a helpful friend. This beastie is now inclined to cooperate. So we'll start with the fet for the Barber, just so that we can move that out of the way. Better now. There's not much work on offer in Brandkrug, but I can find 6 pence worth of odd jobs. Alright, here we go. Sunset Celia and the End of Days. An Obliviate adept, identified only as the Emiliano, rants desperately about the part Sunset Celia played in the Intercalate as the proxy of the sun. Now she walks behind the Watchman, but did she always? She has many of the characteristics of a maid in the mirror, after all. In older texts, she has been called Kalia the Elegabline. Perhaps she was his daughter? Perhaps Tryphon's sister. Perhaps, like the Watchman himself, she is like a shadow cast by 2 candles. What must be revealed will be revealed. Our order's root is tainted, but its branches flourish beneath the shelter of the Watchman's greater tree. I shall invoke its rights before the chancel, the cruciate, and the road. I shall write a final history, or another shall write it for me. This was the book I was trying to remember yesterday, by the way. Perugian Diaries. In 1907, at the age of 18, Christopher Olapoli left Strathcoyne's household to study theology at the University of Perugia in Italy, enrolling under the name Christopher Strathcoyne. For 4 years since his adoption from a Bristol orphanage, Olapoli served as Strathcoyne's pupil and protege, but his relationship with this austere and secretive man was always complicated. His journal confides, "I still think Fraser's intentions are good. Certainly he agrees, but I never understood the final goal of his investigations. He was never prepared to enlighten me, and good intentions or not, I can no longer bear this dream of eyes. We've agreed to part almost amicably." Olapoli left Perugia in 1909 without completing his degree. He had long lost interest in his studies, and the latter half of his journal is concerned with the studies of Umbrian folk songs and notes towards his own compositions, which are of widely varying quality. One of the better ones, In the Marshes of Night, suggests he visited the site of the old Lake Fucinus near Ortuccio. I feel like I'm missing a foresight somewhere here. I'm probably going to want to double check that. De motu corporum veditorum. The author rejoices in the name of Abelard Hubris, and the title might be translated as On the Forbidden Motions of Bodies, evidently a reference to Newton's De Motu Corporum, published some 20 years previously. Hubris's thesis, that stars, planets, and other bodies are proxies or even essences of the hours, and that conjunctions and occlusions reveal the outcome of hour intrigues in the Mansus. Hubris declares that the Great Comet of 1577 was the physical embodiment of an hour named Madrigad, that it disintegrated, but its fragments gravitate to bone marrow, where they can be located even now. He insists that aronoscopic techniques can be used with essential periost and sufficient sky to create a talisman gentrifugic. The Intimations of Skin, fiendishly complex, weirdly distorted illustrations of Congress and anatomy by the haunted visionary painter Niels Fredrik Malsker. Malsker illuminates the evolutions of the names of the Grail with unfortunate clarity. It seems that a lovely who consumes an ivory becomes an ivory, a lovely who consumes a thirstly becomes a thirstly, a lovely who consumes a name of another hour might take its place. In the penultimate illustration, a lovely grapples with a fungoid knot that can only be a name of the crown growth. The lovely's mouth and other portals gape wide, and the growth name is already partially engulfed, but it seems that Malsker couldn't bring himself to illustrate the result, and the final illustration is only a scrawled, bloated obscurity. The Journal of Walter de Wolf. Oh, you know what? I know why. Journal of Walter de Wolf duplicated the foresight. The Journal of Walter de Wolf. Walter de Wolf, 3rd Baron Bankrug, and was grandson of Thomas, son of the disgraced Giles, who eloped with pale Haffren. The de Wolf line might have ended there if Seneschal Ernestine, by then over 80, had not managed to reconcile Thomas with a dying Giles. Walter, though nominally siding with the parliamentarians, manages to stay out of the war, but in 1642 his son Brian runs away on the night of his 16th birthday and joins the royalist army. He is captured and returned to his father, who pleads for mercy and gives his parole for his son's good behavior. In 1648, Brian runs away again to join a royalist uprising. Walter writes of news that Brian has been seen on the field of battle at Gear Camp, but that his fate is yet unknown. Walter writes one last entry about his fear for his son and the future of his family. There the journal ends, but the extensive account of Walter's collaboration with the architect Gregory Wheelock includes usefully esoteric information. There is a smoothed hollow in the altar's foot, something coiled like a serpent, but stiller by far. Serpent root. A mass of rootstock, shiny with age, but still somehow viable. Tiny spidery scratchings marked with embedded eggshell shards encode a cryptic message. Tablet, a book with very few pages. Scroll, a book with a very long page. Codex, pages, cover, spine, knowledge, decently tucked away like organs. Unhatched hymns, hymns attributed to St. Lucia the Eyeless, patron of glassworkers and name of the hour called Meniscate. The hymns venerate every sanctioned hour, celebrating them as the sun undivided, but also suggesting that each hour may become the next, madrigad to watchman, watchman to wolf, and so on. The hymn of the phases celebrates the Meniscate from whom we do not turn, for the truth which is beauty, the beauty which is truth, and the perfect balance between the two. The hymn of the reflections, more puzzlingly, celebrates the Meniscate as the sister of Janus, mother of shadow, whose visage wondrous in emptiness can reveal all truths. And finally, The Rose of Hypatia, a volume of collected teachings of the Sisterhood of the Knot, that arcane contemplative order that existed in all histories, but in some was very powerful indeed. This was recorded by Hypatia and dedicated to Saint Nympha. Saint Nympha is described as not born but cultivated, the sentience that became the saint. Hypatia indicates inhabited a sinner's corpse in order to enable that sinner's redemption. Not all the dead enter the Mansus by the winter door. Not all the dead enter the Mansus at all. Okay, so we've got 0.4 seconds before... I'm just going to lock in what we have before I go any further. So the skill is now level 6. Its power aspects have also increased. Yep, we use all of them, so... So with quenchings and quellings, if I'm using that to improve surgeries and exsanguinations, we only need 3 memories, so a knock and a heart. So what I think I'm going to do here, let's take the core. So the easy knock one is a pattern. I'm trying to remember if we're back to advice on containment. We'll do the radical measure in just verse again, even though I think I kind of overdo it. Okay, sorry. One drawback with push alerts is that if something comes up, I want to read it. All right, so sorry, we were looking for knock and heart. So salt should be an option here, crossing to noon. And I suppose now we can afford the fet. Don't think I have any other obvious knocks right now. When it comes to heart, well, we'll finish the cycle and read Instruments of the Heart. So for that, I would say let's put a core aside just so we can level up. Oh, actually, the funny thing is I could have used inescapable confinement. So we'll set aside a core. I'm not so sure I'm going to have enough time to make the Didumos, but it would seem to me that the health is available. I think all of these are in play, except that I want to use the Foss to make the Didumos. Actually, while I'm at it, let's actually, I could use the good old-fashioned. Let's make rosehip jam, seeing as I've got more than enough. Now, I would guess that we add sugar. Yep. A treat with heart, nectar, and rose. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea to order some more, but we've got plenty of time in spring. All right, my assistant and I have an unspoken understanding. Horizon sight. I can discuss a memory with my assistant. So at some point I'd like to talk with the Stimfling and get another one of those again, but we've been able to get by without the Horizon sight for a while, so I'm not that fussed about getting it immediately. And we will move. Pyroglyphics is good to move aside. We'll move that one. Works for me. So it feels a little weird to keep... Actually, I don't need to keep the consider verb open like that. I can... we'll use the health in this case. Something shipwrecked. What ship lost this? In terms of a to-do list, we're actually doing pretty well for today. I'm a little concerned about getting the Barber up to the level that we need, but other than that, I think we're in good shape. I can lend my assistants something to help, increasing their abilities. So this will be pretty straightforward. At this point, what I'll do is I will serve out some of the Roskragen whiskey. Serve appropriately, pour out. Pour it out. So we'll still be on the right side of making the jam, but even if we weren't, we would have been able to turn that into or we would have bought ourselves enough time through construction. All right, the radical measure, manifesto for experimental and dangerous sounding invocatory poetry, written sometime in the 19th century by Dr. Aaron Peel, a notoriously inconsistent and incoherent text, apparently produced in a tearing hurry. The hours have little time for poetry, Dr. Peel avers, but they have a tremendous amount of time for poets. As the rows open, Dr. Peel explains, an enduring memory opens to the horizon. This is a way of saying something that cannot otherwise be said, and is best only written with one's eyes firmly closed. The Crossing to Noon, the mystic Garcia Sowry gives a picturesque account of the adventures of Franklin Bancroft, Prince of Wines, and Ava de Wolf, the Pale Lady, on their way to the hidden island of Noon. For a long time, the Blackbone pondered her next move, until the moon dared to peep from behind a cloud, and the prince completed the composition of his third sestina, but the lady met the blind gaze of its open pores, waiting for the tide. Garcia Sowry acknowledges in an epilogue that it is widely known that Ava in fact tragically drowned herself and her twin infant granddaughters without ever making such a journey. But he adds contemptuously, it is also widely known that the city unbuilt will so remain, that only one history is ever written, and that Janus is a mantis prank. The Instruments of the Heart, Sister Isabel, then precentress of the Abbey Church of St. Brendan's, engages in dialogues with a heart-long of a kind called Dwendrazon that has taken partial possession of her body. The Dwendrazon, like all its kind, usually dwells in the mantis, but can enter the physical world by manifesting as music and take possession of a willing or semi-willing mortal who hears and loves that music, like Isabella. Isabella records her dreams of the High Mantis, where she is accorded the Dwendrazon status and titles. In return, the Dwendrazon enjoys what it calls Seizura, a welcome oblivion. Our mostly blessing is that we may never cease, except in Seizure. There is something more that Isabella refers to as the Seizura Magna, but she laments that her Dwendrazon will not tell her exactly what it might be. So in 33 seconds, we should be able to bring the surgeries and exsanguinations up. And I probably could have read the Queens of the Rivers, but I'll leave that aside for now. Okay, with Keeper Level Sky and Ascendant Harmony might conjure a Didymos. Now, I'm going to do something a little tricky here. So let's try, if I go to the Pale Desk, I'll use the Faust, although I'm a little reluctant to do so. And Sights and Sensations. Okay, so we're too short. So I do need to use the Fife. What I was thinking I might be able to do would be... Well, I guess I can't rule out the possibility, but it's a little more remote now. Evoke a chilly sky influence. In fact, what I should have done was I should have used the Whist rather than the Faust there, but that's fine. We'll sort through. So what I want to do at this point is we've got the Gullscry workbench. So I need my second best Ascendant Harmony. Oh, actually, you know what? On that, I need to make sure that I'm using a... I need to have an instrument. So in this case, I guess we could use the Sunset Harp. And again, the problem that we have here is that, so I need to generate memories. That, you know, I'll accept for what it is, but okay, we've got possibilities here. The only challenge is that I need to somehow find I can make this work actually. Okay, so I'm going to use a core. And on the odd chance this doesn't turn out, what I'll do is I'll get a confounding parable just because they're worth a little bit more. When I say worth a little bit more, what I mean is just that I can use them for more than one, like I can use them for 3 things, like salt, for instance. So the intention here will be that I want to try and take what I've done with bells and braziers and turn that into another Ascendant Harmony. Now it's going to take me a minute to get the memory, but it takes me 90 seconds to turn that into an Ascendant Harmony. So as long as I have an element of the soul available, I should be able to deliver even without the element of the soul. I might need to cheat and go to the oh, but if I do that, I actually need a okay, I'm gonna hedge my bets a little bit. I know we just read this, but oh, not the bed. Actually, what I'll do here is I'll use the health. So what this does is this gives me 4 sky to work with for the Ascendant Harmony, and this is just again trying to make the most of the the remainder of the day. We've got 4 elements of the soul. For the most part, it's pretty easy to work with this. Where it becomes a challenge is when I want to do sort of Prentice and Keeper recipes, which require 90 seconds, because I do tend to think in sort of 60-second chunks for the game. So if you need something like a hang on, Prentice? Let me double check I have that right. Prentice is 5, so sorry, Scholar and Keeper level recipes are what I mean. It didn't sound like the proper rank, but anyways. So Scholar and Keeper level recipes are what I mean, but basically the 90 seconds are the ones that trip me up the most, because the very least 2 minutes lends itself rather nicely to that division. You know, it occurred to me that I didn't need to give him the globe. Oh, yes I did. Sorry, I got caught by the fact that the globe gives him 1 extra when he's in the same area. All right then. Anyways, yeah. So I mean, I guess I could say, well, just change your framing to 30 seconds, right? So in that case, Scholar recipes are just 3 30-second blocks. But easier said than done. I tend to think in minutes, so this is a minute to the end of the day. So it means that I realistically can do 2 more things with the Barber, although I only need 1. I might talk with him just to see if I can get something a little extra out of it. But a nice drop. I can offer my assistants something to drink. This will increase their aspects. They'll also be glad of the refreshment. And better now, so we'll turn that into money. So at this point here, so this is getting the 12. We're opening the container. I do still need to make sure that I level up quenchings and quellings, so I'll set aside, or not quenchings and quellings, apologies. Surgeries and exsanguinations, so I'll make sure that I keep a heart or a knock set aside, but I have a tryst and a metal that I can work with. So we'll do some beach combing. I tend to do a lot of beach combing just because it feels like there's always a need for fish. Unfortunately, I don't think there's much that I can do with the metal, at least on its own. It's a little too late to make Orpiment Exultant. I could, I suppose, try and turn the to make another iotic essence. But I'm wondering if there's maybe something else that I could try and do crafting-wise. Let's just experiment. So bells and braziers, I'm not... well, you know, a bit of black salts wouldn't be out of place. It also occurred to me that I can make the Wistful Air, which I don't get from books, but would give me another sky memory to work with. That's something for me to keep in mind in the future. Now, one option I do have is if I do pyroglyphics... I'd still need to find some source of liquid, but I could pour a glass of water. Yeah, you know what? We're gonna do that. Pour out. In fact, I don't even need to use up the... Candes this liquid into a ruddy essence of forge power. The origins of hours. The sage and ecstatic Soham, a frequent visitor to the Mansis, claimed to have discoursed with the Beach Crow in person. Soham later insisted on a sky burial. Soham's writings veer from poetry to confession. He identifies from flesh, those who were mortal, from blood, those who arose from sacrifice, from light, entry from the glory, and from stone, those who arose before his knowledge. He insists that the moth was the first god who was blood, but later contradicts himself and claims it was the Red Grail. The Mansis was different before the first god came from light, but never doubted existed, even then. Unhatched hymns. Hymns attributed to St. Lucia the Eyeless, patron of glassworkers and name of the hour called Meniscate. The hymns venerate every sanctioned hour, celebrating them as the sun undivided, but also suggesting that each hour may become the next. Madrigad to watchman, watchman to wolf, and so on. The hymn of the phases celebrates the Meniscate from whom we do not turn, for the truth which is beauty, the beauty which is truth, and the perfect balance between the two. The hymn of the reflections, more puzzlingly, celebrates the Meniscate as the sister of Janus, mother of shadow, whose visage wondrous in emptiness can reveal all truths. And the one thing I forgot to do was preserve an element of the soul to turn into a to actually turn into an ascendant harmony. So I could give up the core to do that, of course. So if I do bells and braziers, if I were to add the savage hymn on its own, yeah, so I would need the 2. But I think in this case here, doing a leveling up is more valuable. I just really need, in practice, I'm really only going to need the 1 element of the soul. But yeah, it's particularly in this case, making the iodic essence wasn't something that I needed, and it's something that I could have done at the bells quite easily. So got a bit ahead of myself. All right, and I believe that is it for the barber's assistant. So normally I would have talked with the barber to get a memory, but we have more than enough to take us through the day. So we will take care of the riddling stare and call it a night. Riddling stare, half-seen faces, mouth half-heard riddles. This is none of Van Loren's work. These defenses are much older than the Curia, but the Curia found a way to answer these riddles, and so will we. Busy day. So in 9 seconds, we are going to do the last little level up we need for the day. We'll turn the confounding parable into we'll take that overnight. Following that, I think probably I will finally make good on reading the Queens of the Rivers. Now, because that's going to be used to upgrade Path and Pilgrim, we really just need to make sure that we have a few memories. So we'll get 1 from reading the book, and then we just need 3 more really to level that up. So that's certainly not going to take us the whole day. What I may do, so I guess the question there would be, we may get something from Oriflammes, but it strikes me that this is the time where I need to start thinking about how I'm going to be reading these various books. I think I might have put the Shaven Lock Tantra down here for a reason. I've committed Rites of the Roots, so maybe it's because it's a hard one for me to find. Anyways, I'll have a bit of a think on that one, but yeah, so we're really at the point now, unless something very dramatic changes in terms of opening a room or otherwise finding additional books, I want to clear this out. I think we're good enough to be able to say, let's move Path and Pilgrim up 1. And then I'll be, as I kind of said before, I want to be a little careful in terms of how I specifically navigate some of this. So what I'll maybe start by doing is finding the top level ones that I want to put in. So a decent example here would be, this is what I've been pursuing with Edicts Martial. So if I have something with 1 moon or 1 edge, I think that makes a lot of sense for me to put inside here. So that's an easy book to read, but a difficult one in terms of all of the elements that I want to put to level that up. Whereas something, let's say Bosk, right? Bosk is a pretty straightforward one for me to level up. I just need to decide what do I want? Where am I going to place all of these various things? Doesn't have quite the same urgency that some of the others did. So where I can, I want to try and prioritize some of the things like Edicts Martial, which are close to where I want them to be, but not fully at the top level. And then as that sort of starts to narrow down, I'll start loosening up a little bit in terms of the various books that I'm going to permit to read. I do generally want to be careful because some of them have elements of the soul that I really need, and other ones, sorry, not elements of the soul, have principles that I really need. So I think in general, Nectar and Scale are going to be hard to come by, whereas, I think, I believe we have like multiple copies of, was it Anbury and Lapidary? I feel like there was one of them where I had like 3 copies. Sacra Lamea was definitely one that was close to that. But again, I think the largest single collection that we have are unread books right now. So we've got here, 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 and here. contain books that we haven't yet committed to the to any skills yet. So I think the time has come for us to start working that down. Of course, all of that will happen in a future episode. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.